My name is Hailey Collins. I'm 29 years old, and for the past 7 years, I've been the family safety net, the emergency contact, the walking, talking direct deposit. While my friends were buying starter homes and planning vacations, I was covering second mortgages, wiring money for urgent repairs, and bailing out business dreams that never had my name on the sign out front. I thought family meant love, support, loyalty. Turns out, it meant transfers on the 1st and 15th. They called me strong, responsible, the one who always comes through. But strength doesn't feel like checking your bank balance at midnight, wondering if you can afford groceries after paying off someone else's overdue electric bill. And loyalty? It doesn't look like scrolling through Instagram, only to see your sister posing in front of a cafe I funded under a caption that says, "Built from the ground up, with family by my side." Funny, I was never in the photo, or the room, or the story. But this Thanksgiving, something changed. Before I tell you how I finally closed the tab, they kept running in my name. Tell me, where are you watching from? And if you've ever been the one holding the family together, quietly, invisibly, and unpaid, hit that like button. Let's begin. The office was nearly silent, save for the hum of floor vents and the occasional metallic click from the elevator shaft. I was still in heels, my blazer folded neatly over the back of my chair. On the whiteboard, someone had drawn a little crown above my name. Hailey Collins, Northeast Division Lead. The ink was smudged but still visible, the same way pride stains when it's not yours to wear. I stared at the spreadsheet glowing on my monitor, but my focus drifted back to the familiar shape of my phone in my hand. 14 missed calls, 5 messages from Melissa, and 3 voice notes from Cynthia, the last one labeled URGENT in all caps. I tapped play. "Sweetheart," my mother's voice came through, slow and sweet, like cough syrup. "The downstairs bathroom's leaking again, and the handyman wants a deposit up front this time. I know it's bad timing, but we really need you." Click. "No, how are you?" "No, how was your day?" "Just mold and money." I leaned back and let the phone rest on my chest. A muted blue skyline loomed through the office window behind me, all glass and distance. A few years ago, I would have wired $5,000 without blinking, even if it meant skipping groceries or pushing my rent past due. I once covered a second mortgage while eating instant noodles 6 nights a week in a shoebox apartment on the Lower East Side. Back then, I thought that meant something. That they would see it. Not just the money, but the sacrifice. I reached into the top drawer and pulled out the old thank you card I kept taped to the back of my laptop. "We're proud of you, Hailey." No signature. Not even a date. Just 3 sentences in a handwriting that tried to look heartfelt and rushed all at once. The ink had faded at the edges. I'd kept it anyway. Some artifacts, like delusions, don't dissolve unless you choose to bury them. A new text lit up my screen. Melissa. "Hey sis, any chance you can help with a new oven upgrade? I've got this holiday pastry idea. Think spiced pumpkin lavender scones, so you. Just a small boost, maybe $12,000? She added a heart emoji, then another one. No please, no thank you. Just emojis. I opened my camera roll instead. The photos were still there, buried deep. Melissa at her cafe's grand opening, standing in front of a powder blue storefront with our parents flanking her on either side. A big red ribbon, gold scissors, champagne flutes raised. I wasn't in a single shot, but I paid for the espresso machine, the paint job, the lease deposit. I even pulled a few strings to help her get the LLC approved faster. The caption on her post read, "When family believes in you, anything's possible." I stared at it for a long time. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to screenshot it, annotate it, send it back with a line that said, "Belief doesn't come with interest rates." But I didn't. Instead, I opened my flight app and searched for a one-way ticket to Charlotte. Morning departure, window seat, no baggage. I'd flown home dozens of times before, always with a warm coat and a colder wallet. Always with some mix of guilt and hope bundled into a carry-on. This time, I wasn't bringing either. I stood, sliding my phone into my coat pocket. The card went in next, one final piece of paper between us. My desk was bare by the time I flicked the lights off. The hallway was quiet, polished to a shine. I passed Dana's desk, empty now, except for the sticky note I'd written her that morning. Client rollout confirmed. Let's breathe. I wasn't sure if I meant it for her or me. As I stepped into the elevator, my reflection caught in the mirrored doors. I looked older than 29. Not in my face, but in my posture. Like someone who'd carried a full family's weight on her spine and had only just realized she could set it down. Outside, the city pulsed. Horns, lights, the distant howl of subway brakes. I stood there, the wind picking at the hem of my coat. I'm not going home. I'm going to see what's left of it. I built the foundation they walked on. And they've rolled out a red carpet for everyone but me. The air in Charlotte hit different. There was no frost yet, just a humid chill that clung to the collar of my coat. I walked slower than I needed to, taking in the streets I hadn't touched in over a year. The city had bloomed while I was gone. Sleeker shops, wider sidewalks, trendier cafes. But the core remained. Slow southern drawls, brick buildings painted pastel, and that faint scent of pecan pie wafting from somewhere you couldn't quite place. I turned the corner and there it was. Lavender bloom. Melissa's baby. My investment. The cafe's new mural gleamed under the late November sun. A cluster of lavender sprigs intertwined with gold cursive lettering. Family. Flavor. Forever. That wasn't there last time. Neither was the gold banner stretched across the window. Thanksgiving dinner, invite only, family first. My stomach didn't drop. It didn't twist. It didn't do anything at all. Through the glass, I saw Melissa. She stood by the main table in a cinnamon brown dress that screamed curated elegance. A blogger I recognized from Charlotte Eats was filming her with an iPhone on a tiny gimbal. Melissa laughed at something, flipped her hair, and gestured toward the buffet table. Every movement, every smile felt like it had been rehearsed in the mirror. She looked polished, glowing, unbothered. I remembered her in tears, sitting cross-legged on my floor in New York, hugging her knees and sobbing, "This cafe is my dream, and you're the only one who believes in me." She hadn't believed in herself. She hadn't believed the bank would approve her. She hadn't even believed she could handle payroll. But I did. I crossed the street and opened the door. The bell chimed overhead. The barista looked up, mid-espresso shot, and paused. A flicker of recognition passed his face. Then hesitation. "Hi," I said softly. "Just looking to grab a coffee. To go." He blinked, then leaned in, voice quiet. Sorry, this is a private event today. It's, Thanksgiving dinner. Family only." I gave a slight smile. "Right, got it." Melissa turned just then. Her eyes landed on me. For a second, she looked confused. Then she blinked, and something shifted. Not surprise. Not shame. Just inconvenience. She pivoted, pretended to check her phone, and walked toward the back without a word. I let the silence hang. The barista coughed. "I'm really sorry. I could get you something outside the event menu if you want." "No," I said. "Don't worry." I turned and stepped back out onto the sidewalk, the doorbell jingling behind me. The street noise returned like a slap. Cars, kids, laughter. I stood still. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt erased. The kind of erasure that didn't come with confrontation. It came with omission, with absence, with stories told just sideways enough that no one noticed who was missing. My phone buzzed. A new notification. At Lavender Bloom Cafe just posted a photo. I tapped it open. Melissa, front and center with our parents on either side, arms around each other beneath the banner. The caption read, "So proud to have built this with my bare hands. Family is everything." No mention of me. Again. "Hailey?" I turned. Jade. Hair longer now, face sharper, but still the same calm, steady presence. We hadn't spoken in over a year, maybe more, but she looked at me like it hadn't been more than a week. She wore a burnt orange coat and held a pie box in one hand. "It is you," she said, walking closer. "Wow, it's been, God, forever." "Feels like it," I said. "Didn't know you were still around Charlotte." "I wasn't, just visiting Noah. We've been seeing each other for a bit." She glanced at the cafe. "He's Melissa's cousin." I arched a brow. "Small world," she said with a wince. I smirked despite myself. "Does she know you and I think so. Not sure she remembers." Jade looked down. "Though she did ask me not to invite you. Said you'd probably feel weird about everything and preferred to stay in New York." Of course. They hadn't just excluded me. They rewrote me. "They told everyone you moved on and didn't want to be involved?" she added. I took a breath. So that was the narrative now. The benefactor turned deserter. The sister too busy for family. The ATM that closed itself. I looked Jade in the eye, steady and calm. "Tell them to enjoy their dinner. It'll be the last one I paid for. They trained me to serve. Now I'll serve them something they won't forget. A ledger of every lie." The elevator opened directly into the suite, the kind of law office where everything was designed to make you feel small. Frosted glass, brushed steel, silence. Even the receptionist spoke in lowercase. But I didn't feel small anymore. Not today. Nathan's assistant gestured me in with a nod. I stepped inside the conference room, the one with no art on the walls, just one steel clock ticking too loudly. The room was cold, clean, controlled. Exactly what I needed. Nathan looked up from his laptop, glasses halfway down his nose. "You look taller." "I'm wearing flat shoes," I said. He smiled and gestured to the chair across from him. "What's in the bag?" I placed the leather folder on the table and opened it. Inside were years' worth of being taken for granted. I slid the first document across. Wire confirmations, dated and highlighted. Transfers to my mother's account labeled home repairs, emergency rent, medical bills. I flipped to the next. PDFs of emails where Melissa had laid out her cafe budget and called me her only shot. Then the deed. Nathan leaned forward as I tapped the final page. "She transferred the title to me after Grandma passed," I said. "I paid off the second mortgage myself. They never updated the address because it made things easier." Nathan examined the signature, then cross-referenced it against the notary stamp. "All legitimate. You've held title for 3 years?" I nodded. "And the cafe?" $70,000 up front, 20 over 2 years. No formal equity, but I have the transfers and an agreement Melissa signed when she thought it would help her get a business grant." Nathan sat back, steepling his fingers. "Hailey, this isn't revenge. This is removal." "I know," I said. "It's not about what they did to me." He tilted his head. "It's about what they never saw in me," I said quietly. "And what they'll see now." He slid over a clean page. "I'll draft a termination of all informal support, financial and otherwise. If you want to add personal statements or conditions—" "I do," I said. 2 conditions. 1, effective immediately, no further deposits. And 2. I hesitated, then reached into my coat pocket. The photo had been tucked into my wallet since I was 21. A Christmas snapshot, taken before everything cracked. I was on the end, half out of frame. Melissa was in the middle, holding the new puppy they'd given her while I was away at school. No one had remembered to tell me they were getting one. I had arrived 2 days later to find it already named. I placed the photo inside the envelope. Nathan didn't ask. He simply sealed the package and labeled it with a Post-it, Collins termination, November 27th, 2024. The door opened. Jade stepped in, wind-tossed and out of breath. "Sorry I'm late. I had to loop around the block twice. Parking here is hell." I stood to greet her, surprised she'd even come. "I brought this," she said, slipping a slim USB drive into my hand. From the prep kitchen. They didn't know I was in the back. Cynthia said the words exactly. We built this from nothing. Then Melissa chimed in. Yeah, and Hailey's barely family anyway. It's all on there. Time-stamped. You might need headphones. It's not loud, but it's damning. I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Not anger, not sadness. Confirmation. My phone buzzed. A new message from Mom. Thanksgiving isn't the time for conflict. Please don't ruin this for everyone. Think about Melissa. Think about appearances. Just be the bigger person, like always. I held the screen up to Jade. They're still playing the same notes. And still think you'll dance, she said softly. I signed the termination letter. That's the last piece of me they'll hold, I said. Nathan tucked the envelope into a locked drawer. You ready? I nodded once. Later, I stood alone at the edge of the alley behind Lavender Bloom. The sun had already started slipping behind the low-rise buildings, casting a copper glow on the brick walls and dumpsters. I checked my watch. Tomorrow, noon. Let's see how honest they are with a room full of witnesses. For years, I paid for seats I was never allowed to sit in. This time, I brought my own chair. And a lawyer. Thanksgiving Day in Charlotte smelled like cinnamon and self-deception. Lavender blooms sparkled under the warm light of early afternoon. Inside, it looked like a Pinterest dreamscape. Velvet table runners, fake eucalyptus leaves wound around glass candle holders, and enough floral arrangements to make a florist weep. Laughter spilled out from the half-open windows. Every voice inside belonged to someone who thought they were there for a celebration, not a reckoning. I waited until the main course had been served. Timing mattered. Nobody expects disruption over cranberry sauce. The room quieted the moment the door closed behind me. Forks stilled midair. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Melissa was the first to react. She rose so fast her chair scraped across the tile, her smile still frozen in place for whoever had just taken her photo. You weren't invited, she hissed, stepping toward me. I smiled politely. That's fine. I didn't come for turkey. Her mouth parted slightly, caught between protest and performance. Before she could say more, I walked past her and toward the long, central table, where my parents sat with plates full of food and expressions full of pretend. Cynthia's face paled, but she still had the gall to wave her napkin like a pageant queen. Hailey, honey, this isn't the time. I placed a folder on the table. Clean, labeled, clinical. Inside, copies of contracts, signed wire receipts, the business plan Melissa sent me 5 years ago titled Lavender Bloom, Pitch for Hailey. The deed to the house with my name in bold. A breakdown of monthly deposits labeled MOMUTILITYSUPPORT. Someone gasped. It came from Aunt Lee. Maybe because she saw her own name on one of the party budget line items I had paid for last year. Silent benefits. Rarely acknowledged, always accepted. Raymond Collins cleared his throat. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Agreed, I said. One that's lasted far too long. Melissa tried to reach for the folder. I pulled it back. I didn't come here to argue, I said. I came to clarify. I glanced at Jade. She stood slowly, like she had waited years for this moment too. From her coat pocket, she pulled out her phone. One tap, and the room filled with Cynthia's voice, shrill and proud. We built this from nothing. A pause. Then Melissa's laugh. Please, Hailey was just the funding source, not really part of this. A few guests looked at each other. A few looked down. The silence stretched. Melissa's jaw clenched. Cynthia's mouth trembled. Not with regret, but with the panic of being exposed. Raymond folded his napkin like he wanted to disappear into it. This, I said, tapping the folder, isn't about money. I scanned the room. Faces I knew. Faces I'd paid to keep smiling. It's about memory, and I'm taking mine back. Nobody moved. I turned to my parents. My voice was still calm. So calm it startled even me. By tomorrow morning, I want the house vacant. Raymond sat forward. You don't mean that. You know whose name is on the deed, I replied. You taught me to never keep score in family, but you were always keeping tabs on what I could give. I just finally did the math. Cynthia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Melissa stepped back, her arms crossed tight. Her eyes darted toward the guests, toward Jade, toward the folder. I picked it up, tucked it under my arm, and turned without a word. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a final line. I had delivered the truth. And truth, I had learned, is never quiet when it's undeniable. They always said I was part of the family, as long as I paid the rent. Now they can learn what market value truly means. The Collins family home looked smaller than I remembered. The porch sagged just slightly on one side, and the paint on the shutters had begun to peel. But the illusion still held, for them, that this was theirs, that I was just a fortunate visitor, orbiting the family sun. Nathan parked at the curb, his car too quiet for the weight it carried. He didn't say anything as we stepped out. Neither did I. The front door opened before we even rang the bell. Cynthia stood there in a robe and slippers, hair slightly disheveled, as if she'd been pacing since sunrise. Her eyes darted between us, then settled on the envelope in Nathan's hand. Hailey, what is this? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. Raymond appeared behind her, already dressed, but with the air of someone who hadn't slept. He looked past me, as if hoping another version of me might arrive. Less firm, more forgivable. Nathan held out the envelope. Notice to vacate, he said simply. 30 days, effective immediately. Delivery is being recorded, both digitally and in writing. Cynthia's hand trembled as she took it. 30 days? I nodded once. Standard grace period, more than what I got when you decided to erase me. Her mouth opened, stunned. Where are we supposed to go? That stopped being my responsibility, I said, the moment you decided I didn't belong. Behind them, Melissa's voice cut in like a blade. This is disgusting, Hailey. She stomped forward, phone in hand, waving it like a sword. I built your whole brand from the ground up. She spat. That glossy investor pitch? I wrote it. I edited every photo. And you just, what, kick mom and dad out of their home? Nathan didn't flinch. Melissa Collins? She turned to him, eyes narrowed. He calmly extended a second envelope. This is a financial reconciliation of the Lavender Bloom account. It includes a breakdown of embezzled petty cash, an unauthorized withdrawal from Hailey Collins' personal fund last year, and a falsified invoice dated February 2023. Melissa's face drained of color. You're bluffing. I don't bluff, Nathan said. Cynthia clutched the first envelope to her chest, suddenly smaller. This isn't like you, Hailey. You were always the one who forgave. Always the one who gave without asking. I learned from the best, I said. Dad told me not to question family. Just give. Raymond's jaw tightened. You'll regret this. I looked him in the eye. I regret not doing it sooner. Behind us, a car door clicked shut. Jade walked up the driveway, coat pulled tight against the cold. She didn't say anything until we were back by the sidewalk near Nathan's car. Her voice was soft but certain. You didn't just stand up for yourself, she said. You said what half this family has been too scared to say out loud for years. I exhaled slowly, as if letting go of something I didn't realize I'd been gripping. As I turned to leave, the front door slammed shut behind us. But seconds later, I heard footsteps, soft and hurried. Cynthia emerged onto the porch in her slippers, looking unsure if she was chasing or running. She caught up just as I reached the curb. Hailey, she whispered. You were always the strong one. That's why we used you. I looked at her, really looked, for the first time in a long time. There was no apology in her voice, just acknowledgement. I said nothing. I walked away. They've stopped calling me. Not out of shame, but because the card finally declined. Saturday afternoons used to mean invoices, notifications, and guilt. Today, it meant coffee in a neighborhood I'd never paid to renovate, never donated to for community pride. A place where I could sit without the weight of expectations sliding down my shoulders like wet wool. The cafe was modest. No branded flower walls or curated influencer booths. Just chipped wooden tables, strong espresso, and the sound of soft jazz drifting above the murmur of weekend life. It smelled like cinnamon, warmth, and freedom. Jade slid into the seat across from me, a little out of breath, scarf tangled around her neck. "Sorry," she said. "Bike traffic is wild today. Who knew brunch was blood sport?" I laughed. It felt easy. We sipped in silence for a minute before she spoke again. "Any word from them?" I shook my head. "They've gone quiet. Not a single message since Thursday night." Jade raised an eyebrow. "That good or bad?" "Neither," I said. "It just is." She leaned back, eyes soft. "Do you miss them?" I looked down at my cup. The foam had settled. "I miss who I thought they were," I said. "But mostly I miss the version of me that didn't think love had invoices." Her eyes flicked toward the window. "That's heavy." "I carried it for a long time," I replied. "Now I'm just setting it down." My phone buzzed once on the table. A message from Nathan. "House transition completed. All legal matters closed. Rest easy. H." I read it twice, then locked the screen. "You know," I said, "for years I thought if I just kept giving, I'd eventually be loved the way I gave. Like generosity could buy sincerity." Jade stirred her coffee absently. "They made silence a punishment. You made it a sanctuary." I smiled. Outside, the sun warmed the sidewalk. For once, I didn't need to check my bank account before checking my breath. I wasn't calculating costs. I wasn't budgeting affection. "I spent years buying peace," I said. "Now I'm just choosing it." Jade tapped her spoon against the rim of her cup. "You know, a few of us are getting together tonight. Friends, not family. Real conversations, messy, honest ones. You should come." I hesitated for a beat, then nodded. "Yeah, I think I will." She grinned. "Bring wine or stories. I've got plenty of both." When she left, I stayed behind for a few more minutes. The old group chat still sat on my phone. Collins Core. The name itself felt like a joke now. I opened it one last time. No new messages. Just the same pinned note about payment reminders and birthdays I'd stopped being invited to. I held my breath, hit leave chat, and then deleted it. The screen turned blank. And for the first time in years, I felt full. As I stood to leave, grabbing my coat, I heard a voice from the table behind me. Soft, half-whispered. "That's her. That's the woman who shut down her whole family." And still smiled. I didn't turn around. I just smiled wider. They used to call me the strong one. Not because they admired my backbone. No, it was because they knew I'd carry the weight without complaint. I paid mortgages I never lived under, funded dreams I was never allowed to dream, and stood outside the glass walls of a life I helped build but was never welcomed into. For years, I thought loyalty meant staying silent. I mistook sacrifice for love. And worst of all, I believed that giving more would eventually make me enough in their eyes. But the truth was simpler, colder. I wasn't their daughter, their sister, their family. I was their balance sheet. I remember the day I walked into Lavender Bloom like I was walking into trial. Only I wasn't the one on the stand. They were. Every document I laid down on that table wasn't just about dollars. It was about dignity. And when Jade played that recording, when their laughter filled the room without knowing they were heard, it didn't break me. It freed me. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't rage. It was correction. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't ask them to love me differently. I simply ended the transaction. The day after Thanksgiving, when Nathan handed them the notice to vacate my house, I felt nothing. No tremble in my hands, no burning in my chest. Just clarity. Melissa called me a traitor. Cynthia cried. Raymond muttered curses he once taught me never to say. None of it touched me. Because by then, I knew the truth. They had betrayed me long before I ever walked away. Now, days later, I sit in a cafe I've never stepped into before. The people here don't know me. No curated Instagram posts, no labels, no history. Just a quiet cup of coffee and the rare peace of anonymity. Jade joins me, and for once, we don't talk about them. We talk about what comes next. I get a message from Nathan. Transfer complete. All yours again. Not just the property, the name, the narrative. Me. Then, in a moment so ordinary it almost slips by, I delete the group chat named Family. No drama, no announcement, just one tap. Gone. Behind me, a stranger whispers to her friend, "That's the woman who shut down her whole family," and still smiled. She's not wrong. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it walks in quietly, with receipts, with restraint, and with resolve. When the people who should have protected you are the ones who take the most, courage means ending the transaction and walking out with your name intact. Because no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And sometimes, the most radical act of love is refusing to be used again. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If you've ever been the one holding everyone else together, if you've ever stayed silent to avoid conflict, if you've ever drained your savings, your energy, your hope, just to make life easier for people who never noticed, then this story was for you. For years, I believed that giving more would finally earn me a seat at the table. That if I worked harder, loved deeper, gave without limits, they'd finally see me, appreciate me, choose me. But the truth is, some people will take as much as you're willing to give, without ever looking back to see the cost. Walking away wasn't easy. Drawing that line felt terrifying, but it was necessary. And if you're watching this and thinking, maybe it's time I set my own boundaries, you're not selfish. You're not dramatic. You're protecting your peace. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the family ATM, the fixer, the one expected to keep showing up with your wallet and your silence, hit that like button. Leave a comment and tell me, what's one boundary you've set or want to set for your own well-being? And if you want to hear more stories about reclaiming your voice, your worth, and your freedom, don't forget to subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next chapter. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't owe anyone your peace just because you share their last name.